All right, guys, welcome to another episode. We are with Fawzi here. Fawzi is an industrial engineering graduate from U of T who specialized in human-centered design. He's done, a bunch of interesting projects. Currently he is also a product designer where, he does a lot of interesting things I want to dive into and ask a lot of questions about. So we'll dive right into it. But before that, Fawzi, thanks for joining, man. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. Just started the new job. Second weekend. It's been good. Good way to start the year. And yeah, got some big goals for this year. Hopefully, I get to achieve all of them. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Hopefully. Where did you start the job?
So I just started at RBC. So
Okay.
I'm a product designer on their mobile app team.
Okay.
So if you're a customer, I'll be designing stuff for you.
Interesting. So you did industrial engineering, which obviously I know like human factors is a big part of industrial engineering. Was that where you kind of decided that you want to take this route? Where did this happen? Did you always have kind of a creative side to you as well, which you wanted to foster?
I actually ended up in industrial engineering kind of by like mistake, by accident. Like when I applied to U of T engineering, you had to pick, I think, 3 programs. So my first choice was actually civil engineering.
Okay.
The second one was mechanical engineering. And third one, I just threw in industrial engineering because I didn't want to do the other ones.
Hmm.
And I remember because like the picture on the site had like someone driving the simulator. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, this might be like a cool like backup. I don't want it, but I want the first two. So when I got my like letter back, I got rejected from like civil engineering and mechanical engineering, and I got the offer for industrial engineering. So I decided to just take it, go with it. They said that first year is like general for everyone, so it doesn't really matter, what program you're in specifically. You can always transfer in second year. And yeah, so I just accepted it. I'm like, what, let's go. I'm not really sure what I want to do anyway, so I'll just accept it for now. And thank God I did, because in first year we took all the civic and the mechanical courses, and they were my worst. Like I absolutely hated them. Sorry if any profs are listening. It wasn't you. It's just my preference. But yeah, it wasn't like what I expected. So I'm glad I got into industrial engineering. I kind of looked more into the program and the curriculum for years 2, 3, and 4. And I'm like, okay, this is like broad enough. I don't know what I want to do, but this covers a lot of different things, and hopefully, one thing will click, and I'll take it from there. So I just decided to stay on, and even like in second year, I wasn't really set on human factors. I kind of took a few courses here and there that cover everything, and I actually wanted to go into programming first. But then when it came time to like apply to internships, I applied to like 50 probably software engineering internships, and I got rejected from all of them, every single one, like not even an interview. And I remember applying to this one UX design internship at Rogers, and that ended up the only interview. That ended up being the only interview that I got, and eventually I got the job, and that's how I found out about the whole UX design, world. And that summer was like one of the best work experiences ever. Like it was like something I was ever exposed to before. But I'm like, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to think about problems, how to solve them, and even like talk to people about them, and like test and experiment and learn. Something about like we have a process, but sometimes it's most of the time it's messy, and I like the messy aspect of it. And I think that's when you can be like creative and come up with your best work.
Interesting. Okay, so obviously now you see yourself as, a lot more, let's say, creative than technical. So you don't do any coding anymore, do you?
I don't do any coding. Like after I kind of had that first UX design internship, I decided to just like stay in UX, but actually kept learning about coding. Like I can do some front end coding. Even did some like coding at one of my internships. But it wasn't really like, it's not really a job requirement for designers, but for me, it's more, I wanted to understand like the technical side of things, even if I
Mhm.
wasn't implementing it, because you can't really, I don't want to look at things in isolation as in, I just make these designs and they magically show up. It just helps me become better at my job when I'm working with someone technical, and even, make their job easier so we can like collaborate better. And yeah, honestly, and even just like for my own curiosity, just, being more of a generalist and kind of just like focusing on like one, just like being a designer.
I see. And you were a experienced designer in Publicis Sapient. I don't know if I'm
Yes.
pronouncing that right.
Yes. So it's like a French word. So it's Publicis.
Publicis. Right.
But I just say Publicis Sapient.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was
Cool.
like my previous job. Yeah. Sorry, you wanted to ask me about that.
Yeah, I wanted to know, you were like an experienced designer, but now you're a product designer, right?
Mhm.
Is
Yeah.
there a difference between experience versus product designer?
Yeah. So depending on the company, everyone like has like slightly different terms in terms of like what they expect from designers. Like some people call it UX designer, some people like merge UX and UI, some people just call it experience, some people call it product. I don't think anyone's like set on any definitions. But I think, at like, to take Sapient as an example, experience design is mostly focused on, think about the overall experience, like the different user flows, like the overall information architecture and the overall logic of either an app or a website or an experience that you're building. And for example, like the product designer is more of a generalist designer. So you do have to have like that UX knowledge, but you can also do some of the visual design, which is more like things like setting the color typography, and things like that, as well as thinking about the content design and bringing that into the picture. So it's kind of a more broad definition of it, which is kind of what I was looking for when I was doing the switch, just being able to be involved in multiple things rather than just focusing on one thing.
I see. Okay. And would you say, let's say, because you mentioned workflow and user experience, right? So designing that like front end or end-to-end user experience for a particular app or service, if someone has experience in process improvement, for example, do you think designing the workflow end to end would be something that they could make some strides and progress in when it comes to user experience design?
I think so, yeah, because I think like at the core level, like it involves like the same rationale. Because when you think of like a flow, whether it's like you said, it's like a process in real life versus someone going through an app, there's like a lot of different like systems involved that interact with one another. It's not like, maybe someone's going down that one path, but to make that path happen, there are like different things enabling it. So I think you can apply the same logic to it. So for example, in the case of UX, sure, yeah, you're building a flow, but you also have to make sure that like the backend system matches what you want to do. So for example, like what information you need to collect from someone when they're signing up, or different inputs they need to keep going. And that involves close work with the technical teams, and that's what makes like the virtual process kind of as like complex as like a real life process.
Interesting. Okay. So I do want to minimize the user experience side just for a little bit, just to talk to you about or ask you about your new comic series that you've been working on. That's been really interesting. I do have to say I haven't seen all of them or read all of them, but I've read a few and they're super, insightful, interesting. I don't know if you do the artwork yourself, but I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I do the artwork myself. So yeah, it's just some like background. It was something I kind of started during COVID. So I graduated in like May 2020, and then I didn't start my full-time job until September. So I kind of had like that entire summer to myself. You couldn't travel, couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Just like everyone else, stuck at home. So I started to think about different like picking up like a new hobby. The first thing I tried was learning magic, and I spent 3 weeks just like watching magic trick videos and like even dissecting like magic shows and like seeing how people did the tricks. I'm the worst magician, so I just like dropped that.
Okay.
So I decided, let me pick something that's more useful and something different that I haven't tried before. And growing up my entire life, one thing I always told myself was I'm really bad at drawing. And I could barely draw stick figures together and make them look good. Like that's how bad I was. So I just signed up for a course, started learning, and it kind of evolved into me. Like one of the videos was about comics specifically, and I felt like that was the one that I was most interested in. I didn't really care about drawing perfect landscapes with like the right shading, but the comic one was about making like a short story, just like 3-4 images. You can tell a story that resonates with someone.
Mhm.
And that was like very like super like useful and insightful to me. Like I was like, I want to be able to do this well. So kind of dive deep into it. All the books in my background that you see, they're all comic books or comic books about comic books.
I can see the New Yorker there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I started. I just like started learning different techniques. Obviously it started bad, but when you start something, you just have to allow yourself to be bad to become better. And I was kind of forcing myself to post them on Instagram every week, and that way just I like as a way to keep myself accountable, because if I just try to sketch them in my book and then close it, I'm not really gonna put in my best effort. So I started posting them. And as for like year 2049, it was like an idea I had last year when I was like trying to think of the next evolution of what I wanted to draw.
Okay.
And I wanted to come up with like a theme. And I thought, the future would be a cool theme. Everyone's interested by the future. Everyone's kind of scared by the future. But I wanted to approach it differently. Instead of, painting these like scary dystopias of, robots taking over, kind of like the cliche stuff.
Yeah.
Let me kind of do it as a way to educate people about things. Because, a lot of things are scary, but they're scary because we don't know enough about them. And once we start to learn about them, they become less scary, and we start to understand, how we come into the picture and like our role in, the world.
Yeah.
Or like how we see it. So yeah, that's how it started. And yeah, so now every week it's like you mentioned, it's like a weekly newsletter. I publish it every Friday. I do all the artwork. The format is one comic, and it's followed by like the short explanation of the specific like discovery or invention I talk about that week. Sometimes it's a startup. Sometimes it's maybe like a scientist came up with like this really cool thing. So I put it in like the context of a story, and that kind of hooks people in. And it's more than just an article that you read and like
For sure. Storytelling would be a lot more like attractive to the people. So how long does it take 100%. You to do something like that? Because I know you also have your full-time job. So is the process of coming up with the idea like very cumbersome?
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot of time. I would say each week, like there's at least 10 hours that go into it. And I mostly do that after work. And I have like a running list of articles that I save that I use as a way to kind of, pick an idea each week. So I just pick like, one topic, I'll just go with it. I'll do the research, and then I'll try to come up with the story. And yeah, by Friday, it's, 8:30 a.m. It's in your inbox and people read it. And so far it's been, the feedback's been really good. People are really enjoying it. I think, I don't have like that big of an audience yet, but I think the best thing so far is that I think only 2 people unsubscribed since I started in September, and I'm almost at like 300 subscribers. So, decent numbers, not as much as, the big newsletters, but, it's a start.
Yeah, man, it's definitely a start. And it's really interesting how you said you don't have a lot of experience in drawing, and then you started learning how to draw. You took courses, you actually took the initiative to do that. Because I mean, these drawings, they are interesting. Like how do you do that? Is that on an app, or do you do it on paper? How's it done?
Yeah, so it's an app on the iPad called Procreate.
Oh, Procreate, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so if you have an iPad, it's a great app. Like you can do like the simplest thing to the most complicated things.
So now that you're learning digital art, maybe getting into the NFT space is the next step.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few people tell me that. That's a topic I've been wanting to cover and that I will cover in like a future newsletter. I definitely don't try to follow like the news cycle. I know, there's a lot of people talking about NFTs now. I think in the current form that I'm seeing it is just, profile pictures. I'm
Hmm.
just waiting to like, I want to like research it more and like see like other use cases that I would feel are more interesting. But yeah, I'll maybe, you never know.
Yeah, for sure. Keep me posted. I mean, I'll be interested to see what you'll do in that space as well, because you definitely showed a lot of initiative here, so it can be interesting. Um, Now talking about some of your other projects, I was looking at Turbo Turbo Menu, and that was also something that was really interesting. You and one of your colleagues worked on it together, right?
Yeah. So it was me and my friend Adam. He's also an industrial engineering student, same class as me. Uh, One of the best developers, if not the best developer I know.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was like one of those things that we both decided to do as like a fun like side project. Also during COVID, um, I think it was just like us trying to like solve a problem. We actually, just for some context, if people don't know the project, Turbo Menu is a tool that restaurants can use to create like a QR code menu. It's completely free. We don't make money from it. It was just like we just wanted to help small restaurants, especially because we saw some other tools were more expensive, and we just
Hmm.
wanted to give like a free alternative. And yeah, so we built it. We actually have, I mean, I think we built it kind of late, like in hindsight, because a lot of people or a lot of restaurants already had a menu set up. And the cost of switching is high because they don't want to retype everything into the
For
new
sure.
one. But yeah, we actually do have like 3 restaurants that use it a lot. Actually, one of them is Beaver Tails, one of the franchises, not all of them,
Okay.
and 2 other restaurants in downtown. And yeah, we don't really work on it anymore. We just have it on, and it's it doesn't cost us anything to run. We just leave it on for anyone to use and create a menu.
I see.
Yeah, but it was a really cool side project. I was like going door to door to restaurants and telling them to sign up and make their menu. Most of the time I got rejected, but yeah, other than that, it was like a fun experience.
That's nice, man. Yeah, a lot of side projects, and I know it takes up energy and time as well, besides doing work, but it almost feels like these side projects kind of fuel your soul so you can continue working as well, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think I see them as like experiments of learning. I feel like every side project I've done has been like a way for me to become better at something. So for example, Turbo Menu was, how do I like build a product with someone from like scratch and launch it, but also market it and like try to get people to sign up, kind of like going through that whole process.
Yeah,
And I've learned a lot from that.
for sure. And it's like when you're doing a project, the skills that you need in order to complete that project, like you identify those skills and then you actually sit down and learn them because you have a goal that you can stick those skills to, you know?
Exactly. Because yeah, it's hard to, I think doing courses and stuff is helpful, but it's hard to retain that information unless you like apply it.
For sure.
And yeah, there's like so many small things that you never think about. Things like, how to send an email, like even like details like what you put in the subject line.
Hmm.
And these small details that you wouldn't really think of,
For sure.
we
Then
start
then you
to,
learn it on
become
the
better at.
project, for sure. Uh, Fawzi, what's your take on, because I know you're like a product designer, so you obviously work with a lot of like product managers as well, right?
Yeah.
So do product managers have a more broad scope and kind of a higher level scope of work compared to the designers? How is that relationship?
Yeah, for sure. They definitely do have like a higher scope, because they essentially like connect, people across different disciplines, and they make sure that everything is, going smoothly,
Hmm.
because you have to balance, like what like design requirements with business requirements, but also technical requirements, and balancing all three is it's incredibly challenging no matter like what company you work at. So they definitely have a higher level view of everything that's going on.
Hmm. And like, do you think in the future though, product designers will also acquire the same kind of skill sets as like product managers?
Um, I don't know about the future, but I think I'll tell you what I think. I think it's important for designers to, besides the design knowledge, have like the technical knowledge and like the business knowledge
Sure.
to kind of keep in mind while designing.
Mm.
Because I think if you have those two things, like that really sets you apart, and you create, feasible solutions. Because it's easy to make ideal states and things that are like I said, ideal. But it's even harder to try to balance, to kind of balance it with the reality that you're in. With, because if you work at a company, there are certain there's like a long-term strategy and different business metrics that you have to keep in mind, but also technical constraints that even if you want to propose something revolutionary, that can be done overnight. So you have to be able to kind of have like a longer term vision and see how everyone's work fits into yours and the other way around.
For sure. So it is important. Like obviously, a designer needs to design really well. But then if they do have that technical knowledge and the business knowledge along with the creative scope or knowledge that they have, then it definitely helps.
Yes, they would call you a unicorn. That's the term.
A unicorn, yeah. Okay. And talking about that and the future, I wanted to know what role augmented reality would play, because I know there's a lot of tools that designers use at the moment, but not necessarily with augmented reality or with virtual reality. Are there things being done in that space right now, or are you aware of things being done in that space?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on in that space. I think every industry is looking into it. I think some of the interesting use cases I saw was around like maintenance. I remember seeing this video a couple of years ago. I think it was like from Microsoft with their HoloLens. It was kind of showing like how someone repairing a piece of machinery would like have these the HoloLens on, and would kind of pull up the instructions and even kind of overlay information over the machine, so you could pull up the manual at the same time while your hands are busy. So I thought that was like a very interesting use case.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And would you say that more of the design work that you're currently doing, like, first of all, before that question, are there any specific tools that help like designers do what they do best?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best tool, which I think most designers would agree with, is Figma. And like over the past, I've only been using it for a year, but even over the past year, like they've been like building and making it better.
What is it called again?
Figma, Figma.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, it's like, honestly, it's a tool where you can do everything. Like you can whiteboard, you can brainstorm with your team. Everyone jumps in. It's collaborative, unlike some other tools. You can create design systems, component libraries. So it really streamlines everything into like one tool. Whereas before you needed like 2 or 3 tools to do all of that stuff. But Figma kind of took everything and put it into one.
So it does all the wireframings and the front end kind of low fidelity design and like
exactly.
It basically creates like an MVP in a way.
Exactly. Yeah, you can go as like low fidelity or high fidelity as you want. And I've used it for both.
Yeah, a friend of mine actually was working on this app idea, and I didn't really know what Figma is back then, but he sent me a link to Figma, and I could actually interact with like the user interface, and he would see where my mouse is, which was really interesting.
Yeah, that's one of the best features.
Do you think the line between a designer and a product manager is going to get like more and more blurry as we move forward?
It's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, like so far, it's I feel like it's pretty like it's pretty separate. I don't know if like the role of a like designer will change in the future, when I don't know if things become, if like a better tool comes along where you don't need someone manually putting all the screens together. Maybe there's like a way to automate that, because a lot of patterns are reusable. So I'm curious to see like how the role of a designer will evolve, because I think the product manager is like harder to replace, because they're already covering so many different things, and they're in charge of that, like the higher level view of the project. So yeah, I guess we'll find out.
Interesting. Yeah, and have you heard of agentive design?
Agentive design, I haven't heard of that.
So basically, for example, traditional designs, we used to design things, objects, whether they're like real life or online, but we had to interact with them in order to get prompts or responses out of them, right? So we would click a button and then it would, prompt a certain action, and then we would get feedback, right? So that's kind of traditional. But then agentive design is where we actually design a product or a service, but it does all of that kind of loop by itself. So it does things for us, but automatically. And I just wanted to know if this was like a trend that you heard of, or you're like working on, or anything like that.
I haven't heard of that term exactly, but I kind of want to read about it now that you mention it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know like it's definitely becoming easier for people to design and build their own products. Like there are a lot of no code tools now that you can use to, some apps let you, I think, create apps from like a Google Sheet. I don't know how that works exactly, but I remember seeing that on like product hunt, for example. Things like Shopify or Webflow, it's really easy to set up like an entire store without touching a line of code. So is that like definitely everything that was very manual before is becoming like super easy to set up, because it's kind of the same patterns that you're reapplying, and whoever's able to simplify that and package it in like a nice product at an affordable price, will attract a lot of people.
And I got another one here. So maybe you might not know this, but I'll ask anyways. What areas of organizations do you think design thinking methodologies are being underused right now? Which, if they use, they could make a lot more strides and progress.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because it definitely depends on the company. I haven't been to like enough companies to form like a full perspective on it, but in the ones that I've joined, for example, at RBC, I know it's like used a lot across all areas. It's been like more popular over the years, but if it's underutilized, I think everyone can benefit from it. Like even if you're not designing like screens or something, but I think design decisions happen every day, like the way you design your strategy, the way you design like your operations, a business model, all of that requires design thinking. And not just saying, I think the traditional approach is putting the customer first, but I think now you have to put like some other things like also at the center. For example, like the environment, and especially the environment. I think that would be the big one that we need to start including, because the needs of people sometimes don't align with are destructive to the environment. So I think we need to put that back into the equation, because we are at a critical time when it comes to that stuff.
For sure. So I am going to kind of end this with a few series of lighter questions. So let's get into that. I wanted to know if you could write something on a billboard, and that billboard was like in the middle of the highway, super big, and everyone can see it. What would you write on the billboard? Or what would you put on? It can be a drawing as well, but what would you write or put on?
Interesting. I think one thing I always tell people is, don't be attached to your own identity. Always, look beyond, what you believe is true about yourself. It's easy to put yourself into a box and say, I'm good at this, I'm good at this, and I'm bad at this, or I'm bad at that. Like you never know what you could be missing out on. So for example, me with like the drawing, that was something I always told myself I was bad at, but the first step is kind of, forgetting that part and, taking it from a fresh perspective. And yeah, I know you said light speed and I keep talking, but yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, so don't attach yourself to anything specific. That was kind of a summary of it.
Yeah, like don't be attached to your own identity. Yeah.
Don't be attached to your own identity. Yeah, I screwed that one up. And now if you wanted to gift a book to a loved one, a friend, family member, what book would you give them?
Ooh, I think this one falls like the answer is like close to the first one. It's a book that I read during the pandemic. It's called Range by David Epstein, and it talks about like the benefits of being like a generalist versus a specialist. Obviously, there are like pros and cons to each, but I think it really spoke to me and kind of like remind me that it's good to be curious and look at be interested in all aspects of life or any topic that you come across.
Yeah, because everything is like interconnected, right? It's not
Exactly. It's a
if
one
you
big
just go
system.
deep into one thing, then you forget the fact that the universe doesn't work the way our minds work, where we just want to, frame things and just look at one thing.
Exactly. And that's like the whole like systems thinking approach, which is I guess what industrial engineering is about.
For sure.
But yeah, actually you spoke of a digging. One of the lines in the book which I always like remember is he mentioned like people are digging trenches because they're specializing into things, and a generalist is good because they can dig across those trenches and maybe like make these connections that aren't so obvious to other people.
Yeah, see, I always see or saw myself and still see myself as a generalist, but there's that little guilt that I have deep down that, okay, if I'm a generalist, then, I'm not necessarily specializing in any
Yeah.
one thing. And I don't know, is that bad? Is that good? So I don't know. I should read this book as well.
Yeah, I definitely have the same like dilemma. But I think for now I'm definitely sticking in like the generalist camp. Maybe that will change in the future. I don't know. We'll see. But I think it's important to just follow your curiosity and see what happens.
For sure, Fawzi, I wanted to thank you for joining, and also again, man, the story about your drawing and like learning to draw, taking initiative, that's really impressive. So hopefully you'll take that and use it in many other ways as well in your life, right? Like learn new stuff and constantly pivot and shift and grow. But anyways, thank you for joining. If there's anything else you want to talk about, feel free. But if not, really appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot, man. Yeah, I really appreciate you having me. And yeah, I mean, just like one last thing is, whatever you think you're bad at, give it a shot. You never know what comes out of it.
Definitely, man. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Thanks.